Your decision to follow Jesus Christ is the most important decision that you can ever make. Once we surrender our lives to follow Jesus, the Bible commands us to be baptized in water as a public declaration of a decision to turn away from doing things our way and follow Him. Next Sunday, February 25th, is your next opportunity to get baptized, and we want to celebrate this milestone with you. So hop onto the Bridgewood app or website and sign up today.
No matter where you're at on your journey, growth classes are designed to equip you to live the life God has for you to the full. This winter semester, we're offering 2 phenomenal 8-week classes. The first step of Bridgewood's Freedom Ministry, Foundations of Freedom, lays the groundwork for understanding God's plan and provision for our lives, helping us to shift our perspective and obtain and maintain freedom from the things that are holding us back. And then we have Starting Point, which explores the foundational things that we need to know as we walk out our journey of faith. And to see just how impactful this class really is, let's take an inside look at what Starting Point is all about.
I'm Brian Hibbard, and I'm one of the leaders of Starting Point. Starting Point is a foundational class going all the way to what is the Bible and why can we believe it, who God is, Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and then we start to move into how does this impact our daily lives and what does this mean for us on a day-to-day basis, and we want to grow and we want to experience everything that God has for us. So together we navigate down this journey, and we have people around us to help us and support us and help lead the way. I was actually a student in Starting Point, and I was in the very first Starting Point class. And for the first time in my life, the picture started to be painted for me as to what this means to me. As I started receiving these bits and pieces of information on Sunday, I knew where they fit into the big picture. And coming through it, and now being a leader, I've seen so many things happen in my own life. The beauty of Starting Point is that we don't care where you're at in life. We don't care how much you know or how little you know. It doesn't really matter. We just want you to show up and join us and be a part of it. We create a safe environment so that you can feel free to ask questions without feeling like people are judging you. It's not about judging people where they're at. We want to discuss your questions. We want to try to answer your questions, and we're all on this journey together. None of us have all of the answers, and that's okay, but we can do this together. So whether you've been at Bridgewood for many years, or you've just started to come, or you're just making the decision to accept Christ, or maybe you're even skeptical, Starting Point is for you. And we would love to have you come join us and come see what it's all about.
Well, good morning, everybody. How you doing today? Good to see you today, and got a great day in store for us, and we're just glad to be here, excited for another great day here in our Relationship Goals series. I know we got a lot of families and couples out there, and we're going to try to dig into that here today. Pastor John said, I'm Brad. This is my wife, Annie. She's joining me on stage today. That's awesome, so I'm excited about that. And so, oh yeah, you can clap for her. You'll find out she's better anyway, so you'll see that here, no problem. But it's a really great series to be in here, just to try to walk through relationships and walk through relationship goals and what that really looks like in our relationships. And so we're going to just kind of dig in here, and I hope that you've got the other two messages that already happened before us. And I know that if you haven't, jump online and get caught up this week sometime and watch those, and I know it's going to help you to kind of get where you know. Just so you guys know kind of where we're at and really the context that we're coming at as we go into this series is that for us, Annie and I, we have 3 kids at home. We've got an 11-year-old, we've got a 5-year-old, and we have a 3-year-old. And that's interesting at times. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking through with you today. And so you kind of hear a little bit of our story and our journey, and hopefully it'll be able to help you as well too.
Yeah, and today we get to talk with you guys about relationships in the home. And we're excited because we really feel like besides our relationship with God, these are the most important relationships that we can invest in. And they really affect every other relationship in our lives. That home relationship really has an effect on all the other relationships. And just to kind of clarify, we're not up here because we're perfect or we've got it all figured out. Not at all. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, we're successful in right now and doing. And some of the things we're going to talk about, we're right in the same boat with you guys. Like, we're working on it. Like Brad said, we've got 3 kids, and it's kind of chaotic. We kind of laugh every time we've worked on this the past couple of weeks because we're like, how did we get picked for the peace in the home one? Like, our home is crazy right now.
We have a little bit of chaos from time to time. And actually, like, this set is it's pretty peaceful and looks like, and I think it really fit well, for the last previous weeks. But this doesn't really
fit
feel
us
right.
very
so
good.
Here, let me help this out real quick. I'm going to just make this feel a little bit better, like our house is. Like that. There we go. That's a lot better.
This feels better. This feels more like home to me.
I feel a lot better. Can any of you relate to us a little bit? Okay. So this kind of fits a little bit. It's a little more natural for where we're at in our season of life and kind of where we're at and what we're going through. You guys can play in the toys later, okay? But honestly, like this kind of will look a lot like our house. If we don't clean like several times a day, this is what our house will be all the time. And so that's just kind of the season. Like, some of you can remember those seasons. Some of you are right in it with me. Some of you are getting ready to experience that here in a little bit. So, but it's just kind of where we're at, and so hopefully you can kind of understand where we're going today with that. And I want you to understand this too, is that although some of you might have a really clean home, and I just felt like that God was just kind of telling us as I was preparing for this, is that some of you might have a really clean home, but inside is like really, really a mess. That although like the toys and things might not be there, there's just so much strife and so much conflict and struggle, and maybe it really is a physical mess, but I think that really what we're talking today is that I understand that a room this size, there's people with some real genuine hurts and some struggles that they're facing, you're going through. And when we're talking about the home, you don't think peace. You don't think refuge. You don't think love. You don't think those kind of things. What you think is conflict, pain, heartache. And so we kind of understand that going into this message here today, that everyone's kind of in a different season and a different place of life. And I hope no matter what season you're in, if you're getting ready to go into this or you're coming out or at the back end of it, that you'll still be able to get something out of what the scriptures that we see here in Colossians chapter 3, and that you'll be able to track with us over the rest of the time here together, and it'll help challenge you. So can I kind of set the bar a little bit for us? I wanted to try to give you an illustration here that I think will help us to kind of get in our minds, okay, where am I at with my relationships? What are the things that I need to work at? Where am I when it comes to really where I'm at in my relationship? So let me do it this way. Come join me up here. One of the things that I see in relationships, there's like 3 general areas. And again, this isn't all of our areas, but one of the things that I see in relationships is that a lot of couples, and even sometimes parents and kids, the first thing I see is they can be back-to-back, okay? So hopefully this will give you a visual. What happens when you're back-to-back as a couple is that this can get pretty dicey and get in trouble pretty quick. Because what happens when you're back-to-back is that you're actually facing opposite directions. A lot of times you have different goals. You have different ideas of what life should be like. You've got your own idea how you should raise the kids and how you should handle the finances and the things that you should do with your time and all those things, and you kind of are facing opposite directions. You're really walking away from each other. And to be honest with you, a lot of times these back-to-back ones just are heading towards a divorce or separation or some kind of a conflict in the home with the kids, where a kid's like, I'm divorcing my parents, or some weird thing that happens these days. I don't know. And so these are the kind of things that you see when we've got families that are back to back. And this happens, it can happen in all stages of life. It can happen right at the beginning, at the very end of relationships, in all stages. Okay, so one of the next ones I see is shoulder to shoulder. Now, I think when you look at a shoulder to shoulder relationship, a lot of times it can appear pretty good. Because when you're shoulder to shoulder, you're actually working together. You're doing the hard things together. You're working towards a common goal. A lot of times in shoulder-to-shoulder relationships, you're working on career goals. You're working on family goals. Maybe, like for us, we're working on trying to raise kids and not die. You know, you got some of you there. So we're just trying to get through some seasons, and we have these paths that we're going. The thing is that what happens in some of these relationships is that these are the ones where you'll see a husband and wife get divorced 25 years into their marriage. Have you seen that before? You're like, what is going on? Why would they be married 25 years? Because they've been shoulder to shoulder the whole time. They finally accomplished the goal. They've got the money in the bank account. They finally raised the kids. They're gone, and they realize they don't have anything together besides what they were doing, working side by side. And then the last one, the one that is really the ideal one, is face-to-face. Now, there's a lot of good benefits to being face-to-face. Oh, that's so sweet. There's good benefits to being face-to-face, but this is the one where you're actually spending time together, you're on the right path, you're living this thing out the way that you should live. And here's the thing, face-to-face doesn't mean that it's easy. Actually, face-to-face means that there's conflict involved, and it just means that we are learning to love the right way. When we are saying, hey, we've got a goal, we're going to each other first, and then we're working. When we've got issues, we're here to work this out. When there's love, all the things that you need to have for this thing to work really happens the best way when you're face-to-face, okay? And so maybe you can categorize your own relationships a little bit, where you're at and how you guys are dealing with in the season of life that you're in, and maybe think about, where am I at with my spouse? Where am I at with my kids? What does this look like? Are we shoulder to shoulder? Are we back to back right now? Listen, to be truthful with you, we've experienced all three of these in our relationship, in our home. We've experienced all three. So why don't you tell them a little bit about one of them recently that we kind of went through? Just going through this, we've kind of brought up some things in our own relationship, and one of them was just that for a few years, Brad coached football, and the first season that he coached, so he's got 2 jobs, and we had our middle child was a baby then, and so it was just a really busy time, and he was working all the time and getting home late, and then getting home really late on game nights, and I had the 2 girls at that time, and my focus was family, and I've got family over here, and I'm taking care of the family side, and he's taking care of bringing in the income side, and we've got the goals, but we were totally shoulder to shoulder. There was no face to face during that time, and we really felt the impact of it, almost to the point where we were starting to turn back to back against each other. And I can just remember going into the second season of you coaching football, and we just kind of stopped everything, and I think it had already started, a little bit of football had started. We just kind of stopped, and we were like, this is broke. We're broke right now. And we just turned and faced each other, and like he said right there, some conflict happened, but we were face to face, we were working on it, and we knew we had a problem, and we knew we had to work it out, and I just want to make sure you guys know, a problem that goes undefined, it goes undefeated. And so we defined the problem, and we were really proactive. We didn't get extra time during that season, and it's not like God was just okay, well, here, you can have 3 more hours in your day. No, we were, purposeful in our time that we did have together. So we did breakfast together during
that time. Like, it was mandatory. Like, we sat down as often as he could be home for supper. If we had to wait an extra 30 minutes or something, we had supper together. We made sure at that time Lauren was in school, our oldest, and we made sure like that she knew, like we prayed over her, we prayed with her, just to know that she knew like mom and dad are both here, we're both surrounding you. One of the best things we did just for our marriage during that time was that Friday mornings Brad had off, and instead of sitting watching TV or playing on our phones or doing something else, we took an hour each day while Lauren was in school and the baby slept to sit down on the couch together, and we did a marriage devotional every Friday just together and just talked about some hard stuff. And it really gave us the time to kind of hash through some of that time where we were shoulder to shoulder and back to back too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you got to be willing to work through the issues when it comes to these relationships. There's going to be things like one of the things that was really important for us and we want to start out with is that you've got to define what's going on. You've got to be able to just look at it and say, okay, where are we? Are we healthy? Because we weren't okay with being shoulder to shoulder and definitely not back to back. Like, it wasn't something that we wanted for our relationship, and it's easy to drift that way and for those things to happen. I don't think that that's ever intentional for anyone, and especially for spouses. I don't think that's intentional, but it does happen, and it does get you there, and there's a lot of different reasons for different people, and we'll talk through a little bit of that here later. But I know that it's one thing that we had to be careful with, and the thing that complicates this the most is that often we are only responding out of the condition of our heart in most of these occasions. And so if there's sin issues, if there's issues going on in your life personally, most of the time that complicates all the other relationships that are happening in your life. And so we start understanding, listen, if we're separated from God, that's really our very first step that we've got to work on. The very first thing that we've got to do to try to fix our relationship is I've got to be right here, and then to my kids. And so it kind of goes in that order so that we can do this thing the right way. And so that's the way that it's happened. That's really the way that God has designed it to happen. And when we do it His way, transformation happens. Like, it doesn't stay the same. God really does work and do some things. And so I want you to turn over in your Bibles to Colossians chapter 3. If you don't have a Bible with you today, it'll be on the screen. But we're going to try to spend the rest of our time here today walking through some of these thoughts of the Apostle Paul and talking about what it looks like to have a healthy and happy home and to have peace in your home. And these are probably pretty familiar verses in verse 18 through 21, but actually we're going to read verses 12 through 15, all of them together. But I want to read verses 18 through 21 because this is probably what you think when we're talking about peace in the home and what it looks like. And so it says this, it says, wives, submit to your husbands. That's simple, isn't it? I mean, it's so easy. And it's fitting for those who belong to the Lord. Husband, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Simple. You know, we can all do it, no big deal. You never get on my nerves, so that's easy. Children, always obey your parents. Did you hear that, kids? My kid, did you hear that one? Easy, right? This pleases the Lord. Fathers, don't aggravate your children, for they'll become discouraged. And so we see this, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, okay, I know these things. I understand it. We're supposed to love in a way that's sacrificial and submit and all this, but I want you to understand is that Paul gives us the strategy in the verses above that we skipped over. Now, we're going to go back and read those because he shows us, listen, if you have these attributes in your life, you're going to be able to submit to your husband the way that you should. You're going to be able to love the way that you should. You're going to be able to obey the way that you should. We're not going to be doing things that were out of line and out of whack for what we're supposed to be. So let's check out now verses 12 through 15 and what Paul's telling us. And it says this, since God chose you to be the holy people that He loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. It says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. It says, remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us together in perfect harmony, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, You're called to live in peace and always be thankful. So again, this is Paul talking to the church saying, hey, listen, I want you to be successful in your spiritual life. I want you to win in this thing called Christianity. So he's given all these thoughts here, and then he jumps right into talking about husbands and wives and children and going there. And I think that we can learn from the example that Paul gives us some of the things that we need to be able to have in our lives first and then in our homes so that we can experience peace in the home. So you guys ready? Let's jump into the first strategy that we see here, found in verse 13, and it's this. It's simply forgive like Jesus forgives.
And I think going into marriage and beginning that home and that family, that first step of like engagement and marriage, it seems really easy. You get Prince Charming, and how could he ever do anything wrong? And he's everything I want in a man. And then it's like years later, and you're like, he still leaves his fingernail clippings on the armrest of the couch, and like
Guilty.
Yeah. So like everybody's imperfect, and you think like husbands, you can remember probably watching your bride walk down the aisle in the beautiful dress and her beautiful hair, and whether it was up or down, and I mean just the picture of perfection and beauty right there. But you probably didn't know at that moment that you were going to be digging her hair out of the tub drain because it kept clogging it all the time, right? Like, and even like those precious little babies, when you first hold them, when you first see that perfect little face, and you're like, this is what we look like together. And I mean, it's just that moment of perfection. And how could this one do anything to ever make me mad? And then you give them some milk and they throw it on the floor in a temper tantrum, or like you get the eye roll from your teenager. Like, everybody is imperfect, and we're definitely going to need to give that forgiveness to everybody in our family.
Yeah, and the example that we get, though, is really from Jesus. Like it said in verse 13, is like making allowance for each other's faults. Forgive anyone who offends you. Forgive as you must forgive others as he did us. And I mean, like, those are the examples that we see Jesus. And he came, lived a sinless life for us so that we could experience forgiveness. And the cool thing that what Jesus offers us is that he continually gives us grace. He continually gives us mercy. He continually, without limits, forgives us. And that is the standard that we're supposed to live our lives with in our home. Now, when it comes down to, let's be honest, I am not to that standard. I miss the mark on that. There's times where I'm frustrated, or I'm angry, or I can't believe they've done that, or I feel mistreated, or like they're taking advantage, or sometimes it's even like abuse or things that go too far, and you're like, really? Am I supposed to forgive? Yeah. And really the reason for that too is not only because of what Jesus did, but because it really is a cancer in us. Is that when we leave those things and we don't deal with them, it's not hurting that other person, and most of the time it's just doing something in us. And I'll tell you, there's going to be opportunity for conflict to happen. There's going to be opportunity for friction. Because listen, when I was by myself and I was bacheloring it and I didn't have anyone else, I could make the decisions. If I wanted to go eat Taco Bell at 2 a.m. in the morning, I spent my money on, I did it. Like that's what I did. But then you get a spouse in the picture, things change. You're like, well, why are you spending our money on Taco Bell? And things like that. And so it's different. And then you add those beautiful little children into your life, and then they bring in more opinions, and they bring in their own things, and then you've got children, several, and every time it brings you lots of opportunities for forgiveness, doesn't it? Yeah. And it's just something over and over that's going to happen because we're in these. When we get close, friction happens, but we're supposed to be close. Like that's the way that God intended it. That's the way that we're supposed to be. Is that we've got to learn to forgive quickly. And listen, this can be difficult. It can hurt. But forgiveness needs to be something that's a constant in our lives, constant in our homes, that's ongoing, that's always happening. It'll be healing to you and your own soul, but we've got to make sure that we're dealing with it. Because listen, we're imperfect. I'm imperfect. Our families are. That's what happens. We don't want to paint that picture. It's just that God gives us the avenue to work through that through forgiveness.
I think a lot of times we make the mistake when we are offended by someone in our family, or the tension and the friction is there, we make the mistake of like adding to it instead of giving forgiveness and changing the atmosphere of your home. back into a peaceful one. It says, 1 Peter chapter 3, it reads, "Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but on the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that many may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it." I like right there where it says you got to seek peace, you got to pursue it. It's not just going to happen. Actually, the opposite is going to happen. And he's telling you right now, like, here's how you're going to pursue peace for your family and for your home is to, when somebody throws an insult at you, when somebody hurts or offends you, you're going to give them the blessing of forgiveness instead of heaping it back on. And when you do that, it does change the atmosphere of your home right back to a peaceful atmosphere instead of a more tension or hateful atmosphere. And I just think it's always good to remember, like, forgiveness moves us and our families from, like, being offended and being hurt to moves us to hope and forgiveness and healing.
Yeah, that's important to know that forgiveness is probably a first step that we need to take. If you're feeling the tension, you know that there's something not right in your relationship, this is the first step, we've got to do to just make sure that we're on the right page with us and God, and then that we can get that between our spouse or our kids, and let them know that, that's a conversation that needs to be done. Not an easy one, but it's the right one. It's the one that we need to do. So forgive like Jesus forgives. We see that there as a great strategy for us to be able to submit and to love and to obey and do the things that we see. The second strategy that we see is that let love pave the way. So we see this in verse 14 in Colossians. It says, "Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us together in perfect harmony." And so we see again where he's saying is that you want it to have perfect harmony, you want to experience peace in your home, put on love so that you can experience that, and it's going to bind you together. It's going to be something that holds that family together when there's difficulties and struggles. This past summer, we were outside playing and stuff, and we noticed there was construction going on in the road in front of us, and we live off of Oakwood Road. And this summer, they were repaving and redoing the road, and we were like, "This is amazing!" We were so happy. We were like, "We're not going to hit the potholes." Like, there was areas that we had to, like, swerve into the other lane so that we wouldn't break our car just to be able to go. You know what I'm talking about? And it was on a hill. It was really safe. So I'm glad that they decided to address that. And but they ended up fixing that road for us and doing that. And I remember going out, and we brought our whole family out there to watch them pave the road. And so they had these big machines that would lay down the road. They'd have the steamrollers behind it that would just smooth it all out. And man, that first time that we got in the car and we drove into town, we're like, "Oh, this is amazing." Like, my car wasn't the issue the whole time. I'm thinking something's broke. And I never knew, like, being in Michigan, how important, like, a nice paved road was. It was like just a blessing, to us to have that. And I was thinking about it, though, when we're talking about love paving the way, that for that to happen, that road to be where it was, they needed to do some work to get rid of what road was there. There was a lot of time invested, a lot of workers. They had to get the machinery out there. They had to get the stuff to be able to lay the new road, and it took a lot of time and effort, sacrifice, and really a lot of money, too, to do that. And I wanted us to think about it this way. When we're talking about love paving the way, I think that for us to have a smooth road ahead and for us to experience some really good things in our relationships, in our home, it's going to take those same kind of investments where we're saying we're going to pave the way now so that later on we're going to have some smooth sailing in our life and in our relationships, because that's really what it looks like. And Caleb and Michaela were talking last week about what love looks like and how it's necessary in our relationships. And he's talking about that agape love, the love that is self-sacrificial, it's always giving, it's one that's faithful, it's committed, it's one that is really an act of our will to do something to be able to bless and to love somebody else. And those are the kind of things that we're talking about. We're saying, let love pave the way in our relationships, and doing some of those hard things so that it works. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 14, Paul again says this, says, let all you do be done in love. Now, I think that this can be easy for us to treat and respect people the right way when we're at work, when we're out and about, and then sometimes we get the wrong idea that we can treat our people in our home differently. He's saying, let everything that you do, all that you do be done out of love, where it's the one that's going ahead of us, that we're loving people no matter what the circumstance in the situation. But listen, we also know that life can bring difficulty and bring hard times in our life as well too. How many of you are excited for opening day? Any opening day? You're like, no, Tigers, they're not really. There's a few of you. Okay, that's good. I just want to give you a quick illustration. Hope that this will make sense for you. For most pitchers, when it comes to their skill set, a lot of them and most of them will start out with one pitch, and it's their fastball. They just rear back and they give it all they got. You know, it's everything that they have, they give it. Now, the good pitchers, they have another pitch, and it's usually an off-speed pitch. Because what that does is that they make the appearance of a fastball, and then all of a sudden that pitch goes away, it drops into the dirt, it curves, whatever it is. For the illustration today, let's call it a curveball. And so the really good pitchers, they're able to give you the appearance of something and then a curveball happens. Now listen, how many of you know that curveballs in life happen all the time, don't they? That we experience things and we're thinking, all right, it's coming down, and then all of a sudden you're like, what just happened? How is it? What is going on here? You're left like clueless. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to handle this situation? And listen, a lot of times curveballs happen in our relationships. They definitely happen between spouses. They're going to happen with your kids. Some of you, your kid is the curveball, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it's just, you don't know what you're getting any single day. And it just happens over and over, and it's all the time. But listen, relationships are going to evolve. They're going to change. We've got to learn to adjust, because if we're going to love the right way, we've got to learn to adjust when difficulty, when struggle, when hard times come, and we've got to be able to do that.
Yeah, when I think about adjusting to curveballs, I think of parenting, and I think of when you first have that little infant, that newborn, and they just kind of lay there, and then they start rolling over, and then they start crawling or scooching across the floor, and they start like pulling up on stuff. They start reaching for everything, and then they start walking. And I think about how we adjust our parenting with our children. Like, I'm not going to parent and care for my toddler the same way I did for the newborn. Like, I'm going to put up some safety gates, right? I'm going to put some like plugs in the outlets so he can't stick something in there. I'm going to like put little latches on the door. Like, I'm going to adjust as the curveballs come in parenting. We need to do the same thing in our relationships in our home. We need to learn to adjust when those curveballs come in life, which they all do, like to keep on loving our kids around those curveballs, to keep on loving our spouse when those curveballs come, because they're going to come. I mean, you guys could probably think in your mind, like, I've got some curveballs right now. And I mean, just to think like marriage is a curveball. When you start living with that person, you're like, oh, wait, you like that and I don't like that, you know. And career changes, or like even like the last few years, like we bought a house, like even having to deal with that stuff, like that's curveballs. Like your kids growing up and getting older, and like as they earn more freedom, like that's curveballs for parents to learn how to like still love that kid even though they're gonna make some mistakes, and just learning how to love in spite of the curveballs that are gonna come in life, in your family. I think of like loss and pain or sickness, learning to love each other through that kind of curveball. Money stuff, money struggles, money, what you think money should be doing and what he thinks money should be spent on, you know, like love each other through those kind of curveballs. And I think just to be ready almost and prepared that a curveball is going to come, and it doesn't matter what it is, but I'm still going to show my family and my spouse and my kids that I love them no matter what.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different things that happen, and I want to just try to address one of these curveballs, because when we are counseling with people and we're working with people in their marriage and their relationships, when we just even looking at statistics, it shows us that there's really one area that stands out from a lot of the others when it comes to friction and issues that happen in the home. Does anybody want to guess what it is? Money. Yeah, almost everyone said the same answer. So we're on the right page here. And actually the Detroit News came out with a study, and it said that, in their study, it said that 70% of divorces were disagreements about money. That actually started out and again, listen, I don't think that the goal for any of us when we get married is to separate one day. I don't think the goal is that we would ever divorce, and that's certainly not what the Bible tells us to do. But I think that if we want to understand that there's some areas in our lives that are going to cause some conflict and some issue, that we need to be aware of them. We need to look at what they're doing in our lives and how we're handling them. If we just scoot them under the rug or think that's not that big a deal, or we just carry on without it, then I think that we're missing the point in this. And so when it comes to money, I was really thankful that we started off our marriage in a way that kind of addressed this, really without us even knowing. I kind of stumbled into it. There were times in our marriage where God, right after we got married, remember God asked us to give all the money that we had been saving in our savings account, and we were like, we're doing it. Okay, we're doing this, and it's like one of those things where it's absolutely insane. But I think some of the blessing of God that we've seen in our lives has happened because of some of the things that we've said. God, we're going to be generous when you ask us to be generous. We're going to give when you ask us to give. And we're going to handle the stuff that we have open-handed and do it that way. One of the things that helped us tremendously was that back in 2005, we were presented an opportunity to go through Financial Peace University, Dave Ramsey, and do that whole thing. And I told her at the time, I was like, we're fine. I was like, we've got $1,100 in the bank. We don't have any savings. We're good. Like brand new married. We can at least pay our rent, next month. And I was like, we're fine. We're totally good. And thankfully, she talked me into going through the class and going through the whole thing. And I kind of was a believer after going through that. I was looking at them like, this stuff makes sense. We can do this. And I remember really battling for a couple of years to try to get ourselves where we were debt-free, and then we could do some of these things and be more generous and give. And it taught us really to be generous, and it wasn't an option for us to give. If you go through the course, you'll see it's not an option for us to be generous. Right now, even today, our money comes out of our bank account every month. We don't even look at it. We just set it to do it on purpose, and it's something that we've done for since then. And I know we gave before, but it's something we say our tithe is set aside. It's what we do. It's who we are, and God's blessed us through that, and it's taught us how to work together when we need to buy things, and need to work together to reach for goals financially and work together. And listen, what that has done is it has brought peace into an area of our home that causes a ton of conflict for most people. And it's something because we've been debt-free since 2006. Now we have the house. We just bought our first house 3 years ago, and so most people are like, what, you waited 12 or 13 years to buy your first house? Well, yeah, we wanted peace in our home. We didn't want the house to rule us, but we wanted something that would be a blessing to us, and so we decided to do things, and you're going to do things different, and it's going to look different than everybody else, but I'm telling you, you can experience something that most people don't have when you do things the way God does. Now, the cool thing is that this Wednesday, we're starting this same class back up. You can be part of Financial Peace. If you're saying, hey, this is something that's hitting home for us, you can get signed up today. Go see Pastor John after the service. You can get signed up on your app. You can jump on right now and get signed up right now if you need to do that. And if that's your step today, then do it. Let it be that for you, because it'll be something that's going to bring some peace to your home. Let me give you some advice, though, and wisdom going into this. Because, listen, what's often the hardest right now is going to most likely be the thing that's going to bring you the most peace in the future. And the things that are easiest right now will often bring the most conflict and difficulty in you. And I'm so glad that we loved through difficult times, and it was hard, and we had to make hard choices and decisions. But because we've done some of those things, we've faced some curveballs through loss and other things that have really brought some peace into our home. And so love enough to be willing to love through those curveballs and let love and pave the way in your relationships.
Yeah, and third strategy Paul gives us is to let peace rule in your heart. And verse 15, it says, "Let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts, for as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful." And we've been watching the Olympics at night, and we watched Shaun White the other day doing his snowboarding stuff, and it was awesome, like just to watch like his tricks and everything. And I remember we were like, he's got it, like he's got gold, he's got to be the one that wins gold. And then even the commentators and like the crowd, you know, they're all like, he's won it. But it really doesn't. He doesn't win until the judges say who wins. Like the judges get to make that call. It's not the opinion of the crowd, or it's not the opinion of the people watching on TV. Like it's what the judges say. And in our homes and in our families, especially like husbands and wives and parents, like we're the judge for what's going to rule in our home. Yeah. And we get to say that we're going to let peace rule in our home. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Like we can't just say it and it happens. Like we're going to have to actually choose for this to rule in our home, because there's going to be times where you're going to be angry at your family. There's going to be times where like maybe bitterness and grudges are ruling your family, and you got to make that choice that I'm the judge of what's going to rule my family and what's going to rule in my home, and that's going to be peace, not this anger or bitterness. Like not, when I think about when life is even just busyness, like the busyness of life, like is that ruling your home right now, or is peace ruling your home right now? Are you choosing, even though life may be busy, I'm still choosing that peace is going to be what rules in my home? When you have fights with your kids, or just trouble and like how to figure out how to raise them and teach them right from wrong, and even just like I think of like the fear of a parent of like, what if my kid messes up? What if they're out driving and they get in a wreck, or like that? Is fear going to rule, or am I going to choose to let peace rule? When your wife disrespects you in your marriage, like that's another opportunity just to choose. Am I going to heap it right back at her, or am I going to choose peace to rule in my home? And when we let that peace rule, it saves our homes. It saves our family from living in just strife and confusion and disorder, and it brings peace into our home.
Yeah, Romans chapter 12, verse 18, it says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Now look at the person next to you, and he's saying he's talking to you. He's talking to you. Yeah, you can say that. Now listen, as far as it depends on us, live at peace with everyone. That means everyone. That isn't just because we're so close to our spouse and because we know all their faults and we know the issues, and doesn't give us permission to not live at peace. Just because we have that time with our kids and we know who they are, we know the things that are going to rub them or make them angry, doesn't mean that we have to. It says as far as it is possible, live at peace with everyone. And listen, we're going to experience the peace of God in our homes, but we often won't experience that unless it's something that's already in us. And I think that that's something that we've got to address too through this conversation, is that if there's no peace in here, how is it going to magically show up in our house? And it's not going to be something that's going to happen. It's got to be something that we're making a ruling in us too, that it's going to be something that rules in our lives as well too. How many of you have ever heard the phrase "home is where the heart is"? Have you ever heard that before? I think a lot of times when you say that, really what they're talking about is, I lived there and I moved away, and my heart's there, my heart's with them, or it's with them. And so that's, I think, really what it is. But I was thinking about that phrase, and it kind of caught me this, and I think that it really applies to what we're talking about here today as well too, is that our home really is a reflection of what our heart is. And that if you want to take a look at what your home looks like, and the things that you're seeing like in your kids that are driving you crazy are probably things that are in you. And the things that you're seeing in your spouse, you're like, I can't believe they would do that. You're probably yourself having those same kind of feelings. And the sins and the issues that are going on in yourself personally is often a reflection of what is going on in your home. And so if we really want to be serious and we're saying, God, I want peace to rule in my life, I want peace to rule in my home, we've got to be willing to look in our own lives and say, God, what in here needs to change so that there can be peace in my life, and then be in my relationship, can be in my family, can be with my kids. And that's really the process that it needs to go in. And we see this in remember verse 12 we read at the very beginning, where he was talking about attributes of the things that we need to have in our lives. Where he said mercy and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. And listen, if we have those things in our hearts when we start our day, those are the things that are going to come out and through the day. When we have mercy and peace, when I'm talking to my wife and she might have been like, I accidentally overspent $200, and I'm like, patience, peace, and mercy. Like those are the things that come out. That's what's going to happen when we fill our lives in that way. That's why Proverbs chapter 4 says to us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything flows from it. It's like, be careful what's going on in here. Be careful the things that you aren't letting go of. Be careful of things, the sins that you're wrestling with, because it's not just going to affect you. Everything in life is going to flow from it, and we've got to understand that we've got to be careful in that. And listen, Jesus is the foundation of our relationships. Because let's be honest, I can't be good on my own. I can't make wise and good decisions. Can it happen? Sure. Can some people make it work? Maybe. But for me, just being honest, I can't make this thing work on my own. I need God in me to work through me, to change me, to really make me new every single day, so that my response to my kids, to my wife, is peace, it's love. It's one that's showing all those attributes that we saw in the home. We're not asking for perfection. That's not really what this message is about. I hope that you can see that's not even what we are. But that even in times of chaos and disorder, there can still exist a peace in your home that you can have, and it can rule your life, and it really starts with that relationship with God. And there's a couple of things that we want to end today with, and it's this, is that we want to show you a couple application things, some easy steps. And because you're like, well, how do we do this? We learned some of these things that we can do, and I hope that they helped you and you can apply them. But let's just give them a couple of like really practical, easy steps that you can do this week to promote peace in the home, promote peace in relationships. So would you just give them the first one here?
One thing is just to speak kindly to each other. I always think like it's amazing how like a little bit of kindness can totally change the tone of your home. And as parents, and as spouses, we should be each other's number one cheerleader in life. Not bringing up always what they did wrong, or yeah, but you did this, or even sarcastically putting one another down in our homes. But we should be cheering them on, saying go for it, just speak kindness to each other.
Yeah. One of the other things I think is just gather regularly. This is something I think culturally is kind of going away that we need to try to protect for families. For a lot of us, we don't have any time where we're just together. So if you can just take moments this week where you're saying, guess what, guys, we're not eating our meals in front of the TV. We're going to just spend time together. Or we need to just get together and pray. Can we pray for each other? What's going on in your life, in your world, so that we can help you through that? Maybe it's simply just hanging out with each other, going outside, where you're just doing something together as a family, enjoying togetherness. Maybe it's hey, you know what? We really need to schedule this vacation because we need to be together. And listen, the key to all this is, and I know kids aren't going to like this, they got to put down the phones, got to put down the devices, and turn off the screen so that togetherness can happen. And listen, we're guilty of that too, is that there's times where we just got to be I'm going to stop looking at whatever else everyone else's life is and start focusing on mine for a minute and be together. And that's something intentionally that we have to do. Be careful just to be together.
Yeah, another one is just to laugh with each other. Just have fun, joke, play around with your family, enjoy laughing with moments or silly things that happen. I know having little ones in the house, like there's so many times that they do something that just makes us laugh out loud. It's so funny. And just to enjoy those moments of laughter together. Like, don't always be so serious, but just loosen up and laugh. I think he's taught me that like a lot.
And I've really trained her well. She's actually the comedian now in our family. Actually, do you have a joke?
I do.
Of
Of
tell
course
us a
I
joke.
do.
Yeah, tell us a good one.
So have you guys heard about the new song about the tortilla? It's actually more of a rap. Thank you.
Now you see what I got to live with. Do you see that? Yeah. One of the things I think will help in your family is be willing to hug freely. That may sound a little weird, but give those little ones you have in your house a hug. I was reminded this week, even with the tragedy in Florida, that how much those parents would love to just wrap their arms around that kid one more time. And we have that opportunity every day. And just to do that. And listen, even because we work with students so much, I can tell what kids have parents who hug on them and love them. I can see it. I can see it pretty easily. And there's just a confidence about them. There's a peace about those kids that they know that they're loved. They feel secure. There's something there that happens when they're at that physical touch. And listen, that is a good thing for spouses to do too. And usually somewhere we can just be connected and love each other in a way like that is something that will go a long way in your family to bring peace.
Yeah, and lastly, it's just to pray frequently. You know, as husband and wife, to stop and pray together. I know even last night, we were just kind of talking, and I was telling him, like, you know, I'm nervous about having to be up here today, and he just like stopped everything and like shut the phones down, shut the TV down, and he just stopped and prayed over me. And to have that is like irreplaceable, to have someone who will just pray with you at the drop of a hat and be ready to pray. And even with your kids' parents, like, I know it's easy to pray with your kids when they're little and you tuck them into bed and you pray with them, but when they get older and they don't really need to be tucked in anymore, I think it kind of escapes us a lot of times. But I think it's important to find those times, even with our older kids, to find those times to pray with them, whether it's before they go off to school, to stop for 2 minutes and pray over your child for the day, or before they go and they're doing an event or a sporting thing, like stop and let them know that mom and dad care enough that to pray with them and over them.
And let these things, I know they seem pretty simple, but I think if we do them this week, why don't you just turn and hey, we can do these things. You know, there's things that we can promote peace in our family and in our relationships. But when it comes to relationships, and it comes to really the most important relationship I think that we can offer to you today is a relationship with Jesus. And it still is hard for me to comprehend and understand how Jesus would be willing to come from God and show himself as fully man and fully God, to live here on this earth, to give up everything that he did, and then not only just live here, but live perfectly, lived a sinless life, and then offer himself freely so that we could be the ones that would experience forgiveness. So that when we go to him, he can say, yeah, freely give. He gives grace and he gives mercy, and all these things that we talked about is really the example that Jesus already gave to us, and that we see in really why we can experience relationships. The cool thing is that because of Jesus dying on that cross and rising again, now we have the opportunity to experience grace and forgiveness and salvation through him. That's really what the church exists for, so that we can introduce people to God. And my prayer is that today someone in this room would say, you know what, God, I'm going to give you those mistakes, those sin, the shame that I've been holding on to, and I'm going to trade it in from an old life, and I'm going to trade it in for a brand new life, like it says in Corinthians. Like he can give us a brand new start and a new beginning. And that is the first step for you if you want to really experience what it is to have great relationships. The first one is to get in right relationship with God, and so that we can be put in order there. And then he'll help us to be able to be in relationships in our families and with our kids and all the people around us, and that's going to be the thing that's going to help us. And today, we would love for you to start that journey with us today. We would love for you to begin that with us, and we're all here cheering for you. We're on your side, and we're in this with you. And it's something that we're always continually working on to be more like Jesus every single day. The cool thing is if you make that decision, you say, God, I'm going to pray that prayer and I'm going to do that. You can do that in your seat today. You can ask him to come in your life. You can ask for forgiveness, and he'll do that today. And if you do that, we want to give you some next steps. Right as you leave today, there's an opportunity. You can grab one of the Bibles. There's a kit back there you can grab. That's your gift from us. And we just want to be able to resource you and help you. What's the next steps? What are the things that we should be doing? And we want to put that in your hands before you go. We can answer whatever questions that you might have. And so I just want to pray for you. Pray for everyone in this room. And you say, you know, Brad, there's some issues in relationships that I need prayer for. Maybe I need salvation. Maybe there's something with my kids that I need prayer for. There's something with my spouse. I just want God to bring peace in that. Would you just raise your hand real quickly? I just want to pray over you. Lots of you that are here, we're just going to pray for you and believe. So would you bow your heads around the room today, and we're just going to believe that God will do something supernatural in this moment to change you. So God, we thank you, Lord, that you're greater than any difficulty, anything that we face today. And so God, we are so thankful today, God, that you sent your son Jesus so that we could experience eternal life with you. God, you made a way for us to be forgiven, to be free. And God, I pray for those that are saying today, I need to make a new start and a new beginning. God, would you transform their life today? God, would you take that old person and throw it out and give them a new start in life, and one that's full of freedom and hope and the grace and the mercy and the love of Jesus like they've never experienced before. God, I pray today specifically for families, God, that are in turmoil, that are struggling. They're the ones that are facing the turmoil in their homes. And God, I pray, Lord, that you would do something supernatural this day in that home. God, give them the courage to address those issues, to pave the way right now, to do some hard work, and so that they can be face-to-face in their relationships. And so, God, I pray, Lord, that you would do something great and supernatural in them, in these lives today. God, I pray for a husband and wife who have been living shoulder to shoulder or maybe even back to back. God, would you restore something in them, God, that would bring that love back, that would bring that passion back into that relationship, that you would give them the courage to address some of the issues. God, give them the courage to be able to walk into that relationship and to be able to have honest conversations. And God, I pray that you would bring healing, that we would respond in the right way. God, that our hearts would be right and that we would love the way that you want us to love. So God, thank you, Lord, that you've given us an example of Jesus. We thank you, God, for the example that you want peace in our homes. And so God, I pray that you would not only put that in our homes, but it would just be part of who we are in our lives. So God, we thank you for it. God, we love you today, Jesus. In your name, amen.